Hi everyone, it's Lynnea from LDRS Creative, and I'm going to make a rainbow card today using the new Envelope and Postage Collage 4x6 stamps. Now the great thing about this stamp set is that if you have the postage collage dies or the nested postage collage dies, these stamps will fit within those segmented areas. I'm not going to be using it with the dies today, but I am going to be using one of the outline from the nested postage collage dies and the Postage Collage Mask stencil. So that's where I'm going to start. I have a piece of A2 cardstock, and this stencil has grid lines and the LDRS Creative company name on the front. But the great thing about stencils is that you can flip this over and nobody's going to know. So mine is actually adhered to my A2 sized cardstock backwards. If you were to use this as it's intended, that small rectangle that you see on the left would actually be on the right. So I've just flipped my stencil over. Nobody's going to know, but it's going to give me a little bit more creativity to play around with. I'm using the negative pieces to mask off areas. I want to create a rainbow design. So each one of these rectangles and squares, I'm going to be ink blending a different color over. So that's why I'm using those pieces to mask. I'm going to start here with some La La Lavender ink. This is a purple ink, and I'm ink blending all of my open areas so that it's darker at the bottom, and then I'm just kind of blending it up towards the top. So each time I ink up my brush, I'm really laying that color down heavy at the bottom and just letting the ink fade out towards the top. Now, as I went, I did forego using those masking pieces and just use some masking tape. You can use the masking pieces or masking tape, whichever one is easier for you. Since I was doing a lot of moving around and moving the tape and everything, I just thought tape was easier, so that's why I switched over to the tape. But those inner masking pieces are included with the Postage Collage Mask stencil if you want to save your tape. I used some dandelion for my yellow, and then I have tickled pink for my bright pink square. Now I'm moving on to my green, and my green is going to be key lime pie. I use Bali blue for the blue, and then I'm going to finish up at the top with in your face orange. And with each color, I'm doing that same blending technique where I'm keeping the concentration of the ink heavy towards the bottom and then just blending out towards the top. Really nothing special about this ink blending. I just wanted to get some color down so that I could have different blocks of colors on my card panel. I'm going to peel off that stencil, and you can see that I'm left with this adorable rainbow blocked background. Now I'm going to fill it in using the envelope and postage collage stamps. Now here you can see that this is where if you wanted to use the postage collage dies or even the nested postage collage dies, you could cut out this panel and you would have that postage collage look with the stitched outlines. I decided not to use that today. I'm just going to grab my stamps and find the stamp that fits over each ink blended area. Instead of lining these up perfectly, which you definitely can do, what I'm doing is just laying it over so that it lines up, and then I'm kind of just smidging it over a little bit, maybe up and to the right a little bit or down and to the left. I'm just kind of making these so that they don't line up perfectly. It gives a more whimsical look to the background. I'm going to do 3 at a time. You could do all 6 if you wanted to, but I wanted to make sure I had enough room for my magnet. And I do apologize for my head being in the camera there, but you do want to make sure that you are lining these up so that even though I wanted them to be a little wonky, I still wanted them to be, generally in the correct area. So I stamped down my first 3, and then I cleaned my stamps, and I'm going to move on to the remaining 3. And again, I started by lining them up and then just kind of pushing my stamp up or down or to the left and right so that they are not perfectly lined up. And in the end, you'll see when I hold that up to the camera, you'll see that they're not perfectly lined up. They kind of give that whimsical look where they're offset just a little bit. There's my final 3 envelopes. I'm just going to clean off these stamps, and then we're going to start adding some details. So I put away my stamping platform, and I chose to go with just a regular round block. You could continue on with a stamping platform if you wanted, but for some of these smaller elements, I find a handheld acrylic block to be just a little bit easier. I'm still using that envelope and postage collage stamp set, and I'm going to add on some of those little ties to the envelope. I have a seal that I put on, and then I'm going to stamp the little postage mark, and there's also a little distressed line stamp that I'm going to stamp on all three of these kind of plainer envelopes. I didn't add any extra embellishing to the postage items, the flower, the dog, and the cat. I just added some to the envelopes. Now I've switched over to Texturize It 2 4x6 stamps. This is one of my favorite stamp sets. It has a permanent place on my desk, and I reach for it all the time because there are lots of little elements, like these little slashed lines. There's little like grid lines, and my favorite one is the one that I use last, and that's just a stamp with a bunch of different sized dots. The whole point of this Texturize It 2 and the Texturize It 1 stamp set is just to be able to add different textures all over your card. And my favorite way to use this stamp set is with alloy ink. That's what I'm stamping with now. It's LDRS Creative's gray ink, and it just gives some nice texture in the background without being too distracting from that rainbow, which is obviously the forefront of the card, the focal point of the card. I'm finishing up now with that dotted stamp that I love so much. You guys know I love to add ink spatters, and this is just a great way to add directed spatter just by kind of stamping that here and there and everywhere. So now here's where I'm going to grab my nested postage collage dies. And again, if you wanted to, you could cut out the envelopes with that inner die that's going to give the stitching around it. But I just wanted to keep this as a full panel with a decorative edge. So I'm using that outer edge that creates that kind of postage stamp outline. And then I have a gray card base that I'm going to add this onto with foam tape. And that's really it to this card. I chose not to add a sentiment, but there are lots of LDRS Creative sentiments that you could add in the center if you wanted to. But not adding a sentiment lets this be just kind of an all-occasion card that I can send to anybody on my mailing list. That's it, you guys. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys again soon. Bye!